Arsenova, and let's go through the main headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump says that Iran downed a U.S. Army helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. Israeli airstrikes on Lebanon have killed 8 people and injured at least 32 others. And Russia reports attacks on Ukrainian military infrastructure, adding that it intercepted more than 550 drones. Tensions in the Gulf have escalated after the United States carried out strikes on Iranian military sites following President Donald Trump's claim that Iran downed a U.S. Army helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran later retaliated this morning and struck the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain.
The United States says it has completed strikes on Iranian military sites near the Strait of Hormuz after President Donald Trump accused Iran of downing a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. In a social media post, Trump stated that the helicopter had been patrolling over the strait and that both pilots were safe and uninjured. He said the United States had to respond. A U.S. official said the Apache was brought down by a one-way Iranian attack drone, though it was not immediately clear whether it was deliberately targeted. U.S. Central Command said its forces hit Iranian air defense systems, ground control stations and surveillance radar sites with precision munitions. It described the operation as a proportional response to recent attacks on U.S. forces and commercial ships in regional waters. Iran has not claimed responsibility for the helicopter incident. After the U.S. strikes, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned that Tehran would not leave any attack unanswered and told Washington to leave the region. Iran's Revolutionary Guards later claimed attacks on U.S. military targets in Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. Bahrain told residents to seek shelter after warning sirens sounded, while Kuwait said its air defenses were engaging hostile aerial targets. Iranian state media reported explosions near the Strait of Hormuz, including Keshem Island, Bandar Abbas, Sirik and Jask. It also said 2 water reservoirs were hit in southern Iran, disrupting supplies in nearby areas. Meanwhile, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said that the country must move beyond a no-war, no-peace situation following overnight clashes, while warning that Iran would not surrender in the face of continued violations.
We must get out of this no-war, no-peace state. War is certainly not in the country's interest, but if they think that by violating our dignity, our territory and our homeland, we will surrender or back down, then let them only dream about it. This is not something that we will back down from.
The escalation follows recent exchanges between Iran and Israel and has added uncertainty to US-Iran talks over a possible deal to end the conflict and reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran has strongly condemned the move by the U.S. and its European allies in the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency for proposing a resolution against Iran's nuclear program. Our correspondent reports from Tehran.
In addition to their military standoff in the Middle East, Iran and the United States are clashing at the International Atomic Energy Agency as the UN Nuclear Watchdog's Board of Governors is holding its quarterly meeting in Vienna. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has written a letter to foreign ministers of member states of the agency's board denouncing the US for tabling a draft resolution against Iran's nuclear program. According to the state-owned IRNA news agency, which carried the letter, Iran's top diplomat slammed the move as politically oriented and an ill-wishing act to justify Washington's anti-Iran policies and to seek legitimacy for its attacks on Iran's nuclear sites last year. warning against abusing the IAEA. He said that the draft reminded the June 2025 adoption of a resolution which paved the way for the 12-day Israel-US attacks and bombing of Iran's major nuclear sites under the UN safeguards. Following the air raids on Iran's 3 major civilian nuclear facilities and IAEA's failure to condemn it, Tehran suspended all its ties with the UN watchdog, with the exception of Bushehr power plant. Meantime, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs, Kazem Gharibabadi, in a post on the social platform X, said the US draft resolution against Iran is an attempt to whitewash the crimes. Citing IAEA documents, he said the Israel-US attacks last June on Iran's nuclear facilities resulted in halting the verification activities and banning the agency's inspectors from Iran for safety reasons. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran Foreign News.
Israel has carried out new strikes across southern Lebanon, despite an Iranian warning to stop attacks in the country. Lebanese sources said strikes across southern Lebanon killed at least 16 people and injured dozens. Entire Israel issued fresh evacuation orders for residents, including in the city's Christian quarter for the first time. Lebanese authorities said the overall death toll from Israeli attacks since March has risen above 3,600, with more than 11,000 wounded. Unrest has spread through parts of Belfast after a knife attack left a man seriously injured, triggering anti-immigration protests and debates and clashes on the streets.
Unrest has spread through parts of Belfast after a knife attack late on Monday night left a man seriously injured. Hundreds of anti-immigration protesters took to the streets on Tuesday, with some setting vehicles on fire and blocking roads. Firefighters worked to extinguish a burning bus, while police, ambulance crews and other emergency services responded to scenes of disorder. The protests followed the charging of a 30-year-old Sudanese man over the knife attack in North Belfast. Police said the victim suffered serious wounds to his neck and head, with earlier reports also describing injuries to his face, eyes and back. The case is not being treated as terrorism. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the stabbing as sickening after video of the attack was widely shared on social media. Police in Northern Ireland have appealed for calm and increased patrols amid calls for further demonstrations online. The unrest comes at a time of heightened tensions in Britain over violent crime, immigration and asylum policy. Northern Ireland also saw anti-immigration rioting last year after anger over an alleged sexual assault.
Russia and Ukraine have continued to exchange strikes, with both sides reporting attacks on military targets and infrastructure. Moscow says it hit Ukrainian ammunition and fuel depots, energy facilities and troop positions, while air defenses intercepted more than 550 drones in the past day. Ukraine says it struck Russian ammunition depots, command posts and logistics hubs. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says U.S. mediation efforts are on hold. All the contacts continue. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the coming weeks could be critical for diplomacy, while Bulgaria has announced a halt to military aid for Ukraine. The European Union is weighing sweeping institutional reforms to strengthen its global geopolitical stance. From structural mergers to new defense mechanisms, proposals in Brussels are exposing deep divisions among member states over sovereignty and military coordination. Our team breaks down the core of these strategic debates.
As global diplomatic dynamics shift, the European Union is examining its capacity to influence major international events. Political analysts note that while the bloc was founded primarily as a peace project, navigating modern geopolitical friction has sparked a push for more coordinated action. EU High Representative recently addressed these challenges, specifically focusing on the debates surrounding European military coordination.
Defence is a national competence, and we are trying to push member states to work more jointly together, because also if the member states are strong, also the European pillar in NATO is strong. Now, why I don't support additional army? It's because, every member state has one army. That's why it is very important that we don't create structures that could create confusion, but not to create alternative army to those armies that already exist.
Beyond military structures, administrative reforms are also under review. One major proposal includes merging the EU's External Action Service directly into the European Commission. However, foreign policy experts point out that this has highlighted differing views on the division of powers between Commission President and High Representative, raising concerns among several member states regarding the centralisation of authority. Decision-making rules are another point of contention. Germany and Sweden support moving from a consensus model to a qualified majority vote for foreign policy. Conversely, nations like France and Belgium argue for maintaining the veto power to preserve individual national sovereignty. The debate also extends to long-standing concepts, such as the potential establishment of an EU Security Council, an idea dating back to the 1980s. Proponents suggest a smaller, concentrated format could eliminate the need for 27-member consensus, with some defence observers proposing the inclusion of the United Kingdom due to its significant role in continental defence. However, the initiative faces formal opposition. Smaller EU member states have officially raised concerns regarding their exclusion from high-level decision-making, while several security delegations argue that a separate council could overlap with existing NATO frameworks. As institutional debates continue in Brussels, the proposal remains unadopted due to these unresolved sovereign and transatlantic concerns.
Pope Leo XIV led a vigil attended by more than 40,000 people at Barcelona's Olympic Stadium on Tuesday as part of his visit to Spain. The event combined prayer, music and personal testimonies, including an account from a teenager whose father had attempted to kill her mother. During the gathering, the Pope reflected on domestic abuse and violence against women, a theme he addressed in the following remarks.
So many crime reports, even today, reflect a toxic climate in family relationships marked by abuse and oppression, and in particular by violence against women, which unfortunately often leads to femicide. We are all called to address this dramatic reality, both personally and as a society, because we are responsible for confronting it in all its dimensions. If violence exists, if selfishness prevails, if even love among family members turns into hatred, we must question the dynamics of our society, the culture of individualism, and the temptation of violence, but not God.
The Ebola outbreak in Africa is becoming increasingly difficult to contain, according to reports. Health authorities are warning that shortages of resources, insecurity and growing international travel restrictions could complicate efforts to stop the virus from spreading.
Health authorities in Africa are facing growing challenges in containing the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda, as the number of confirmed cases has surpassed 600 and the death toll has climbed above 100. According to the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention, the vast majority of infections have been recorded in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where dozens of new cases continue to be reported. Uganda, meanwhile, has not recorded any new confirmed infections in the latest reporting period. The Centres for Disease Control warns that response efforts are being hampered by serious operational constraints, including insecurity, shortages of ambulances and medical supplies, deteriorating health facilities and poor road infrastructure. In some affected areas, health centres lack clean water, protective equipment and decontamination materials. Officials have also highlighted community mistrust as a major obstacle to containment efforts, complicating surveillance, contact tracing and public health interventions. The United States has urged European countries to consider travel restrictions for people who have recently visited affected countries after Washington imposed its own entry measures covering the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda and South Sudan. US officials say the restrictions are intended to prevent the spread of the virus, while the Africa CDC has expressed concern that travel measures imposed despite international health guidance could negatively affect response operations.
Turkey has formally confirmed its role as host of this year's UN Climate Summit after signing the COP31 host country agreement in Bonn, Germany. Turkey's Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change Minister Murat Kurum signed the agreement during the Bonn Climate Change Conference. Kurum, who will also serve as COP31 president, signed the protocol with Simon Steele, head of the UN climate body. He said cooperation between Turkey and the UN Secretariat will continue to deepen ahead of the summit.
Here in Bonn, we want to further expand the circle of consultations. Our goal is to make our agenda more mature, more inclusive and stronger together. We have built COP31 on dialogue, consensus and action, with the contributions of our stakeholders. With an implementation-focused vision, we have positioned it as the COP of the future. At the same time, we want to turn climate commitments into concrete actions, and those actions into measurable results.
Somali soccer referee Omar Abdulkadir Artan arrived in his home country's capital, Mogadishu, to a rapturous welcome by fans and officials after he was denied entry into the United States ahead of the World Cup.
Cheers echoed through Mogadishu on Wednesday as Somali referee Omar Abdulkadir Artan returned home after being denied entry to the United States ahead of the FIFA World Cup. Artan, who had been set to make history as the first Somali official at football's biggest tournament and was recently named Africa's Referee of the Year for 2025, was turned back over the weekend by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. U.S. authorities said on Tuesday that the decision was linked to alleged ties to suspected members of terror organizations, a claim that has drawn attention and controversy. Speaking upon his return to Somalia's capital, Artan described the situation as fate and expressed gratitude for the support he received from FIFA.
What happened has happened, and it is fate. FIFA has supported me well, and they have been following my journey closely up till now. I promise you that in the upcoming matches, I will go further and leave a positive mark. Somalia is ours, whether things are good or bad. I want to tell our youth not to lose hope in our country. That flag is ours.
His return to Mogadishu drew a warm reception, with senior government officials, including the sports minister, the defense minister, and senior representatives from the Somali Football Federation, present to welcome him at the airport. The Somali government said it had attempted to resolve the issue through talks with both U.S. officials and FIFA, but those efforts were unsuccessful, leaving his World Cup dream unfulfilled.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the EU's 21st sanctions package against Russia. Stay tuned.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News, and now we continue with our top story for discussion. The European Union is preparing its 21st sanctions package against Russia, targeting key sectors including energy, banking, trade, fisheries and sanctions evasion networks. The proposal also includes tighter restrictions on Russia's so-called shadow fleet and new export bans on military-related technologies, as EU policymakers continue efforts to reduce Moscow's war revenues amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The package announced by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen now moves to the Council of the European Union for unanimous approval. EU officials say the goal is to further tighten economic pressure on Russia, particularly through oil revenue constraints and expanded trade restrictions. To discuss this, we are joined from Kiev by retired Colonel Andriy Ordinovich. Colonel Ordinovich, thank you for making time to join us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me once more time.
Thank you. Colonel Ordinovich, how significant is this proposed 21st EU sanctions package compared to previous rounds in terms of economic and military pressure on Russia?
From one to another sanction of European Union, they are tightened. It is a good sign, because Russia has already lost 1.5 trillion US dollars for the 4.5 years of applying sanction. Also, due to the fighting of oil refinery targets, the Russian already also lost 1.05 or 06 billion US dollars of revenue. Any sanction, it is a tool to move forward a political agenda within mind of Russian leadership. And 21st sanction is also driven to this. Nobody would like to hurt very strongly Russia, but only to persuade the Russian leadership that their war of aggression against Ukraine, it is a barbaric policy, it is an unacceptable policy. And among the sanction proposition are touching very much deeply and widely Russian economy, Russian political system, as well as a shadow fleet of Russian Federation.
Colonel Ordinovich, the EU is focusing heavily on Russia's energy revenues again. Do you believe measures like freezing adjustments to the oil price cap will materially reduce Moscow's income?
I believe the proposition to keep the cap on low level, helping Russia only probably to sustain, not to much deteriorate it. And this amount, which was stipulated in this proposition, 44 US dollars per barrel, it is probably a minimum right now which could accept European nation. But looking in history back before the existing Soviet Union, the policy of Western country towards the Soviet Union, the keeping oil price as low as possible, helped to collapse of Soviet Union. If Russian government would be wise enough, they probably will consider it, look at in the history, and try to adjust or to be more accountable to it and adjust their policy towards stopping the war of aggression, not to and avoid the entire collapse of this country. I believe that the low price of oil could help Western European Union and other countries, first and foremost, to pull down the very much aggressive foreign policy of Russia towards the Ukraine and beyond of Ukraine. It is also related to stability and security of European continent and beyond.
The EU is also expanding export bans on metals, alloys and drone-related systems. How critical are these components to Russia's military-industrial complex today?
If I would mention in one practical example, for the last shut down Shaheds, our technical engineers and specialists analyzed the composition of spare parts of it, and they figure out 67% of the components or spare parts of this UAV are not coming from Russia. They are coming from some third country, including China and beyond of China. Also, some probably not following the sanction regulation. Some spare parts are coming from other countries. And reducing ability Russia to take these rare earth materials in order to produce more in quantity and quality different military assets would help again to present the political agenda for Russian government to recalculate their attention, recalculate their economy probably, or adjust their economy toward the civil society demands, but not production.
Colonel Ordonovich, for the first time, the EU is considering restrictions on fish imports. What does this signal about how far Brussels is willing to go economically?
You know, it is one of the indicators that they really wanted to show up to the Russian government that some even food supply to Russia could be hard in fish terms. I believe it in order to propose this proposition, it was wisely and very balancingly calculated and find there is a narrow point of Russian economy in order again. Everything is going clockwise around political agenda, and it could not be very much significant, but could hurt the civil population of Russia to getting fish and the meat as a type of, it is another type of political pressure on civil society, and civil society should rebuild or build their raise voice toward their political leadership. I believe it is some kind of pattern staying behind.
So, moreover, the sanctions package also aims to close Belarus as a backdoor for trade. How successful has Belarus been so far in helping Russia circumvent sanctions?
I believe that numbers of goods which are dual use specifically for the military industrial complex are proceeding through the Belarus. And Belarus and Russia, they so created a unified state, and numbers of sanctions which will apply to Russia, not apply to Belarus, help it to circumvent of this or avoid the sanction. I believe it is also a right step forward to pressure Belarus, pressure Belarusian political leader on this subject, and not allowed to avoid numbers of good efforts for the bringing understanding of Russia and Belarus for a negotiation table. If I would say that currently Belarusian leadership allow Russian to use their soil for the amplifying and signal of launched UAV towards Ukrainian territory. And Belarus could feel also some painful stuff in order to understand that it would be better for country as independent as well as a joint country with Russia not to provoke deeply West and European Union. It is right policy toward the Belarus to pressure them, not to allow them to escalate toward and support more widely and strongly Russia against us. I mean, against Ukraine.
Colonel Andrei Ordonovich, thank you very much for your insights and for contributing to our program. We appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region.
On world business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Welcome back to news, and now we turn to our regional stories. Turkey and Saudi Arabia's transport ministers have signed new agreements to deepen cooperation in transport, logistics and railways, marking what Ankara described as a historic step in bilateral connectivity. The deals will support logistics centers, railway cooperation and new regional trade links, including routes through Iraq to Saudi Arabia, while talks continue on broader plans to revive and expand historic rail connections across the region. At least 13 people, including 11 children, have been killed after Pakistan's military carried out airstrikes across the Afghan provinces, according to the Afghan Taliban. The strikes mark a renewed escalation between Islamabad and Kabul, despite a fragile ceasefire agreed earlier this year. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
According to Afghan government spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid, Pakistan carried out airstrikes in the eastern provinces of Kunar, Khost and Paktika, killing at least 13 people. Mujahid says 11 of those killed were children. He also said at least 14 others were injured, all of them women and children. The Taliban says the strikes violated Afghanistan's airspace and hit civilian homes. This latest incident comes amid long-running tensions between the two neighbors. Islamabad has repeatedly accused Kabul of harboring militants who it says plan and launch attacks inside Pakistan. Kabul denies those accusations and says militancy inside Pakistan is an internal issue for Islamabad to resolve. The latest violence have put the fragile March ceasefire at risk, raising concerns that tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan may flare up again despite China's mediation efforts. For now, Kabul is accusing Pakistan of targeting civilians, while Islamabad has yet to respond publicly to the Taliban's claims. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Pakistan has defended the cross-border operations targeting militant hideouts in Afghanistan, raising fresh concerns about stability along one of the region's most volatile frontiers. Here are Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan's Information Minister Ataullah Tahir says precision and collaborated strikes were carried out along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border in response to recent terrorist incidents inside the country. He cited attacks including a suicide vehicle bombing on a military post in North Waziristan on June 2nd and an attack on a federal constabulary post on June 9th, as well as an attack on a police station in Bannu in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Tahir said the operations targeted alleged hideouts and safe havens of militant groups operating across the border. He added that while Pakistan remains committed to peace in the region, it will not compromise on the safety of its citizens. And the military campaign against militancy will continue until such groups are eliminated. The statement comes as tensions escalate with Kabul. The Afghan Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid has accused Pakistan of carrying out aerial strikes in Afghanistan's eastern provinces of Kunar, Khost and Paktika, claiming women and children were among those killed and dozens injured. Islamabad accuses Afghanistan of providing safe havens to militant groups to carry out cross-border attacks. The Afghan Taliban denies the allegations and blames Pakistan for its own security failures, calling the issue an internal matter. In February, Islamabad said it was in an open war with Kabul after a surge in militant violence inside Pakistan. A ceasefire was later reached in March during China-hosted talks, briefly easing tensions along the border. But it has repeatedly been tested by renewed clashes and reported cross-border strikes. Earlier this year, hostilities along the frontier intensified, including Pakistani air operations, targeting areas inside Afghanistan such as Kabul and Kandahar, where Taliban leadership is based. According to a United Nations report published last month, at least 372 Afghan civilians were killed and nearly 400 injured in the first 3 months of the year. Relations between the two neighbors have remained deeply strained since the Taliban's return to power in 2021, with cross-border militancy remaining a major sticking point. Hera Mustafa for A News, Islamabad.
Georgia and the European Union are set to hold a critical meeting on Wednesday over the possible suspension of visa-free travel, as both sides offer starkly different readings of what the talks mean and what is at stake. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
On June 11, Georgian officials will sit down with the European Commission representatives for the first formal dialogue session since the EU activated its visa liberalization suspension mechanism against Georgia. Both sides agree on the date, but they agree on very little else. European Commission spokesperson Markus Lammert was direct about why the process was launched. In March 2026, the Commission suspended visa-free travel for Georgian citizens holding diplomatic and service passports for an initial period of 12 months following agreement among EU member states. Lammert said that the Commission believes Georgian authorities have undermined the core principles on which visa liberalization rests, including respect for human rights and democratic norms, calling their actions incompatible with EU values. Georgian Foreign Minister Maka Bocharishvili pushed back on the political framing surrounding the meeting entirely. She described it as a routine technical consultation required automatically under EU regulations whenever the suspension mechanism is triggered, and urged politicians and activists to stop using it as a pressure tool, warning that the speculation was damaging Georgia's relationship with the EU. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze went further, calling suggestions that Georgia could lose visa-free travel outright blackmail, and said that Georgian society was informed enough not to be affected by it. Lammert, for his part, confirmed that the June 11th meeting would be purely technical, with no public statement or briefing expected afterward. The EU, opposition groups and the civil society organizations have consistently offered sharply different assessments of Georgia's democratic trajectory from those of the ruling Georgian Dream government. Wednesday's meeting is unlikely to resolve that gap, but it will mark the first official moment both sides address it face-to-face. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Uzbekistan is strengthening its air defense and military aviation capabilities. A new presidential decree oversees the creation of a combat command of the Air Force and the introduction of a modern digital control system. Our correspondent Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Uzbekistan is continuing reforms aimed at strengthening the protection of its airspace and national borders. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev reviewed measures to modernize the country's air defense and air force systems. A new presidential decree provides for the establishment of Air Force Combat Command based on the existing command structure. The new body will operate using a modern digitalized command and control system. The decree also outlines measures to increase combat readiness through the creation of new units equipped with precision-guided weapons, modern aircraft and unmanned aerial systems. Special attention is also being given to personal training. The Military Aviation Institute in Karshi region has been upgraded in line with international educational standards and equipped with modern simulators and training technologies. Cadets receive both theoretical and practical instruction, including flight training at the Khanabad airfield. Defense Minister Shuhrat Muhamedov described the decree as a historic step, stating that the reforms are expected to double the combat capabilities of military and air defense units, while strengthening the country's ability to protect strategic facilities from potential aerial threats. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
The European Union is preparing a new sanctions package against Russia, and this time companies in Central Asia may also come into focus. As Brussels looks at ways to tighten enforcement, questions are emerging over possible sanctions circumvention routes. Fariza Kalimuzina reports.
Central Asian countries could soon come under new European Union sanctions over ties with Russia. Brussels is preparing its 21st sanctions package, and this time the focus could extend beyond Russian companies to businesses in third countries suspected of helping Moscow bypass restrictions or maintain critical revenue channels. The warning came from the EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, who says pressure on Russia must increase by targeting networks used to circumvent existing sanctions. At the same time, the European Union plans tighter export controls on around 50 companies worldwide. Countries mentioned include Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, China, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates and India. More than 30 entities linked to drone production are also expected to be included. EU officials have not yet revealed which companies could be affected, and the final list has yet to be published. The package is also expected to expand restrictions on Russian banks, oil-related businesses, crypto platforms and defense-linked firms, while limiting exports of metals, chemicals and industrial components that could potentially be used for military purposes. And according to the European Commission, the package could be formally presented before June 14th, before being sent to EU member states for approval. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Turkish and Syrian officials say economic relations between the two countries are entering a new phase with ambitious plans to boost trade, reopen border crossings and expand investment cooperation. Our correspondent Adam Morrow reports.
Turkey and Syria are setting ambitious new targets for economic cooperation, as officials from both countries signal a major acceleration in trade and investment ties. Speaking at the Anadolu City Economic Summit in Gaziantep on Tuesday, Turkish Trade Minister Ömer Bolat said that Ankara and Damascus hope to increase annual bilateral trade to $5 billion within the next 2 years and to $10 billion by 2030. Bolat also announced preparations to open new customs gates along the two countries' shared border, including the long-awaited Islahiye crossing. He also said that officials were ready to reopen the route linking Nusaybin in southern Turkey to the Syrian city of Kamishli. According to Bolat, improved border infrastructure and transit procedures will play a key role in facilitating cross-border trade and supporting Syria's economic recovery. Speaking at the event, Syrian Economy Minister Mohammed Nidal al-Shar described Turkey as Syria's natural partner, calling for deeper economic integration between the two neighbors. He also invited Turkish companies to participate in reconstruction, industrial, and infrastructure projects, saying Damascus was working to streamline regulations pertaining to trade, investment, banking, and industry. The remarks come as Syria seeks to rebuild its economy after years of conflict and international isolation. Officials say thousands of Syrian factories have resumed operations in recent months, while new production lines are being established across the country. For Turkey, the reopening of economic channels with Syria promises to enhance cross-border trade, improve regional connectivity, and create fresh opportunities for both exporters and investors. Tuesday's summit in Gaziantep comes amid stepped-up efforts to normalize economic ties between the two countries, with both governments increasingly emphasizing trade, investment, and reconstruction as key pillars of their future bilateral cooperation. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Now we'll have a short break. Just stay tuned.
Well, hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. 2 hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to A News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. Turkey and Saudi Arabia have signed landmark agreements on logistics and railway cooperation, marking a significant step toward deeper economic integration and regional connectivity. The deals come as both countries explore new overland trade corridors linking the Gulf to Turkey and Europe, while discussions continue on reviving the historic Hejaz Railway, an ambitious project that could eventually connect Turkey with Saudi Arabia and Oman, creating an alternative trade route beyond traditional maritime choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz. To discuss the strategic, economic and geopolitical implications of this growing partnership, I'm joined by Dr. Furkan Halit Yolcu, security expert from Sakarya, Turkey. Dr. Yolcu, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Yolcu, how significant are these new logistics and railway agreements between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and what makes them different from previous cooperation efforts?
Well, it's quite, understanding for us as the Middle East experts with an historical approach to the matter. As we know, this was an Ottoman plan, mostly designed by Abdulhamid II, to connect Istanbul to Hejaz through a railway, which could support the logistics and trade between the very end point of the Middle East, including Yemen and Oman. This was a secondary part of the project, but the main concern was to connect Hejaz to Istanbul to sort of boost trade, cooperation and logistics integration between two regions, which are exporting and importing based on the goods which are raw or materialized semiconductors, materialized products that require some level of know-how and industrial equipments. So what's gonna happen most likely is that these railways will serve for importing oil from the Middle East region to the Anatolian yards, which already export oils, and then Turkey can sort of send out industrial components to the Middle East, which are mostly needed for upbringing the baby industries, the infant industries of the Middle Eastern countries of the day.
Dr. Yolcu, what technical, financial and political challenges would need to be overcome to reconnect railway networks through Syria and Jordan into Saudi Arabia?
Well, the thing is, there has been a lot of conflict around Syria lately. And there's increasing tensions between Syria and Israel at the same time, because Syria recently closed its borders to any Israeli citizens carrying Israeli passports. So this sort of escalated the tension between Syria and Israel, and people are afraid that it's going to be like a triangle between Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, where we see a next level of conflict escalating from the region. To be specific, for Jordan, I don't see any issues. It might be only affected by the spillover effects of the surrounding conflicts that sort of happen around Jordan, but within Jordan within Jordan or including Jordan, I don't see any sort of conflicts escalating in the recent and the upcoming one. What can happen is that, you know, there is this diversification in the region that's happening, whether states are forced to camp either on Iran side or the Israeli side. So I think this can sort of create a buffer zone where Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Kuwait, Syria, Jordan can sort of meet up and enlarge this buffer zone to be the zone of normality. And then this zone of normality can push the Israeli and Iran camps to be outliers to the region. So this is a theoretical discussion, but I think now the IR theories and the things that are happening in real life are now even closer to each other, because what we can see, things are discussed that within a decade before is now actually realized. So this might be actual reality within a decade, where we see states are pushing to be normalized in terms of bilateral affairs, regional affairs, and the states with escalated conflict are the outlying states that are pushed outside the normal zone and left out of the cooperation that's already happening in the region.
How does this initiative complement other regional projects, such as Iraq's Development Road Project and the Middle Corridor?
Well, obviously, it's complementing to any logistic attempt that's trying to save money from the conflict that's going on, that's blocking Hormuz and that's causing disturbances in the Indian Ocean. What we see is that the Red Sea opening and the Strait of Hormuz opening is now both under jeopardy because of the conflicts and the pirate activities that has been going on for some time. I think these two projects are going hand in hand, because I think Turkey has been sort of laid the foundation for both of these projects, and the vision that Turkey is carrying for the region is actually not depending on the straits or gulfs that are controlled by states that are likely to have conflicts, and instead have safer railways which are already cheap, not maybe cheapest, as cheap as the seaways, but still cheap, and which can sort of create an alternative to the seaways, which are always under conflict. But this doesn't mean automatically that the railways that are going to be built are going to be safe from conflict. This is another issue that needs to be resolved within the region. But I think if they design it right, and if they protect the route in a way that it's close to the urban parts of the Middle East, and it's not really going through deserted areas for so many kilometers, it can be arranged and protected by the national armies as well.
Dr. Yolcu, what benefits could businesses and investors expect if these logistics and railway networks become operational in the coming years?
Well, the thing is, all the business, all the industries are now based on exports. Yeah, if you have a product that's working, that's being produced on a large scale, then you want to scale out. You want to improve your business and get it on an international level, and that happens through exports, because now all of the industries, even the infant industries that are now basically startups and small companies, are actually growing on export. So export has become a vital faculty that all of the enterprises and businesses are trying to now own. So I think this railways and the logistic integration of the Middle East, which is happening now, is only likely to support this export branch of the businesses, which is actually what's growing them and what makes them the international players that they want to be sort of getting in the maybe the middle life, as we call it in business. And if they get internationally exportable based on logistics, based on feasibility, then this is going to help each countries that are exporting to the others. Yeah.
Dr. Furkan Halit Yolcu, thank you very much for your valuable insights and for joining us today. We appreciate your time and expertise on this important and evolving story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest updates.